Hi, I'm John de Lancie, and this is the Shuttle Pod Show. And I thought, well, this is really strange. And he goes, I want everyone to read the play. Let's read the play again. So we read the play. I mean, we did a table read
of the play.
And then he went, last night's performance, 3 hours and 25 minutes. Today's reading, 3 hours. Hush! 25 minutes of acting. Acting.
Yeah.
There will be no more acting.
On the line.
Yes, get it out.
That's Andiamo.
Gonna go and do my convention thing. Got my costume, I'm going now. Yeah, we're having a ball. It's Star Trek, y'all. Hey, down the border. Beam me up.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Shuttle Pod Show. Today we have very special guest, John de Lancie. We'll be answering your fan questions, doing some Star Trek trivia, finding ourselves on Connor's remote island, and much more. As always, our Patreon members get a full extended version of this episode. I'm Erica LaRose, but before we move on, we have a special message from Andy Robinson.
Like, subscribe, and join us on Patreon.
Thank
you, Andrew.
And now for your host, Connor Trinneer, and guest host, Mark Cartier.
Hey. Mark, you're in the hot seat today, one of the hot seats.
I'm excited about it. This is my favorite place to be.
Yeah. Dom is about to begin a country-wide journey.
Cross-country trip.
Cross-country journey.
Across America.
Dom.
Good luck. The middle parts are a little flat and
Large,
boring.
wide.
Not to say they're not attractive, but
I'm from the middle part.
you're from the middle part. I went to school in the middle part.
No.
Yeah, so it's the three of us. And also, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Treks and Trekkers, welcome back to the Shuttle Pod Show. We are once again guests of Rogue Machine Theater here at the Matrix. And we have today in the Golden Throne with us the actor who played, well, yeah, we have God.
That's right. Let's just say it.
Let's be clear.
Really clear about that.
Yes, one of the most iconic roles in Star Trek. John de Lancie, thank you for being here.
Yay.
You're welcome.
Here, John.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We were just in, Dom and I were just in your hometown, Philly, a few weeks ago for a convention. And
Oh, wow. You were
Did you
also-
have a hoagie?
I did not, I don't eat red meat anymore.
Really?
Really?
Yeah. Stopped eating the red meat, which I would have had a Philly cheesesteak, but.
I thought red meat.
Well, I will
made you
say this, that
handsome.
Philly has become an extraordinary food town.
Yes, very much so. And there's a vegan restaurant there called Veg, which is sort of revelatory.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you get back often?
I would have said no, and then of late I have been. I've been working with the Curtis Institute on a couple of different projects.
Right.
And I was back there, I don't know, was it in March, I guess, doing a show back there. So, yeah.
And your dad was the first chair oboe.
He was the first chair oboe of the Philadelphia Orchestra.
Yeah. And also.
And he taught at Curtis, and then for about, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ran the Curtis.
Wow. And you had just finished a tour.
And the Curtis is...
The Curtis is a music school that was started in 1924. It was essentially a school that was started by Mary Louise Bach, who was the heiress of the Curtis Publishing Company, and Stokowski, the great conductor, who was the conductor for the Philadelphia Orchestra, convinced her that we needed American musicians and an American school to train those musicians, because orchestras back then, back in the 1920s and before, were bringing a lot of their musicians in from Europe. So wouldn't it be great to have an orchestra or a school that, you know, that was a kind of a farm team, an incubator.
the West Point for music.
There we go.
Right.
So that's how it started. And I think the most students that they ever have is 150. I'm not sure exactly what all the stats are about this, but it's free. and it's been free since its inception.
Oh wow.
Which was when?
In 1925.
Wow.
Or 24, 25. And if you were talented enough to get in, it was free.
Is it endowed or is it?
Well, it was endowed by the Curtis Publishing. And Curtis Publishing at the time was a big deal. Saturday Evening Post,
Right.
the Ladies' Home Journal, these were big publications.
Right.
So it was endowed by that money, yeah.
And you just finished a tour with.
I just finished a tour. They asked me to do the Stravinsky's The Soldier's Tale, L'Histoire du Soldat.
I've seen this. Yeah.
And so I did it with a group of 7, and we went to 8 different cities around America. The Curtis is always on tour to give its students an opportunity to play. And when I say students, these are.
You showed me a video.
Yeah,
I mean, they're
they're
top notch.
top people.
Yeah.
Most of the orchestras in North America and Canada and what have you have Curtis students in them. I mean, a large percentage of
Right.
Curtis graduates in them. So
You've spent a lot of time doing orchestral narration, did a lot of projects.
Right.
How did that come about? I mean, you've done major theaters, major events.
yeah, somebody, and I'm not sure who it was, pooped out of a Peer Gynt production with the LA Phil, and I got a call, and so I went in and did it. What's really nice about the orchestral world is that if you do a good job, you will ask to come back.
Really?
To come back, it's not like the acting world.
It's not like TV or film.
We'll have dinner, never.
Yeah. So I started just by luck. You know how those things are at the top. With the LA Phil, and then the New York Phil also had somebody poop out, and they needed a replacement right away. And they called me up, and I went in and did that. And I really like it. I'm, dare say, good at it. I'm not intimidated by the orchestra, but let me tell you, you can have a lot of reasons to be intimidated because once that music starts, people have asked me in the past, what is it like? And I said, well, just imagine going down the Colorado Rapids and you fall off. Well, the rapids keep on being rapid, and the raft keeps on going. So don't fall off.
Right. Yeah.
Don't drown.
Don't fall off.
Be on your A game.
Yeah, and unlike in acting, you have also something which actors can bend time.
Yeah.
All of us have had that experience of going, oh, I'm not sure what the next line is, so I'm going to go and look at my water and take a drink and
So
imagine,
good.
and then maybe even say, so what do you think I should be saying?
Exactly.
You don't have that.
Right.
That doesn't exist.
Right.
It's a train leaves the station situation.
You really need to know it. You really need to know it.
And explain what you're doing with these orchestras.
Well, I started out doing just straight narrations.
Yeah.
They were the ones that had all had been written. And
you perform dramatic pieces while
yes,
the
they were literally narrations within the music or in between the music and stuff like that. As time went on, and I was asked to do many of them, actually probably all that exist in the main repertoire, I began going, wow, these are, the musicians have, or the music world has done what it does to a lot of these things. Mendelssohn's Midsummer Night's Dream Well, Mendelssohn wrote the incidental music to Midsummer Night's Dream because of the play.
Right.
But I'm doing a narration, and excuse me, I have been in Midsummer Night's Dream twice, and I cannot tell you what this story is on this page
Really?
from the narration. It's just a few words here and there, and, over hill, over dale, and then the music would start. And you kind of go. So I began thinking, I can retrieve the original texts and start to do those things. So I began to do that. The most complicated, and I'll very quickly, Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Okay? Nobody cares about the story of Romeo and Juliet except for Romeo and Juliet.
Right.
The parents forget about, and the nurse is nice, but, So about 35 composers have written music for Romeo and Juliet, of which maybe 10 are really fabulous.
Right.
Prokofiev and Tchaikovsky and, people like that. So I stripped down the play. I hired 2 actors, 2 singers, and 2 dancers, and told the entire story of Romeo and Juliet with the 2 plot points, which is the killing of Tybalt and the drinking of the poison.
Right.
So I had 2 actors to do the lines all through this music. I had 2 singers who could be their doppelgangers, who gave us the operatic versions of those. And I had the dancers, and they all danced. All 6 of them danced anyway, and then a chorus. So these are big, complicated productions with very little working in orchestral time, which is very little. Orchestras are not producing arms; they are presenting arms. And so I would do shows like that with 6 days of rehearsal, maybe even less. So everything has to be really plotted out beforehand and figured out.
So you begin to work in conjunction with the symphonies? They hire you then to facilitate and create?
Correct. And some of them are more fun to work with, and some of them are less fun to work with. Mostly dependent on the conductor. Dependent on the conductor. And I had some wonderful collaborations where they understood that what was being presented was actually a new show, a whole new way of thinking about this. And so it became known as, what is it called? Symphonic theater. I thought it was going to kind of take off everywhere, but because they were so complicated and they were, a lot of effort went into them. But I did I did the children's concerts here for the LA Phil. I had a series where for adults on a Friday night called First Nights, which I called sort of my didactic things, which was what was it like to be at the opening of The Rite of Spring, which was the very famous kind of riot, artistic riot that took place in Paris. Right. And so I hired 65 people as clacks in the audience.
Oh,
yeah,
that's great.
To start screaming and stuff like that, and I had dancers, dun, 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 dun. And I had Stravinsky and Nijinsky. Stravinsky was up. Nijinsky was up on a chair, and Stravinsky was holding him, and Nijinsky was. I mean, we know this as fact, was calling out to the singers backstage off on the wings. He was calling out the dance numbers. I mean, the dance beats, So he's going 58, 59, 60, 61, 61. All this craziness that was going on, and then could take it back and say, "Okay, how do we get here?" And talking to the audience as the maestro, as the narrator, coming out and saying, "Okay, how did we get to this?"
Yeah,
and then So I did a lot of those things. I just finished doing a new version of Peer Gynt where, oftentimes, most of the time, conductors are not willing to move music around and stuff like that.
Sure.
And there are a lot of things that you discover when you get deeper and deeper and deeper into this. In the same way that I discovered with Midsummer Night's Dream. Why does Midsummer Night's Dream start with Act 2, Scene 2? I mean, where's the setup? Mm-hmm. Well, back in 1840 or whatever it was, Midsummer Night's Dream had bifurcated into two shows. The Fairy Princess, but classical music, stuff like this.
Right.
And then, if you happen to have a Zero Mostel in your group, you would do the Merry Adventures of Bottom the Weaver. So it starts in the woods.
Yeah, exactly.
So when I did the entire version of that, I went, because I was upset that here it was, I had just finished one with Mazur at the New York Phil. I went, this is just not right. There's something, the story is not being told. And that's my part of this equation. Why is that the case? And somebody asked me, actually, during that performance, we'd like you to do it in Los Angeles. And, well, I'll do it, but I want to do the entire story. Whatever you want to do. But then I realized, oh, my God.
No, I have to do the entire story.
Where's the music going to come from?
Yeah.
So I looked at the Mickey Rooney Korngold. What did Korngold do when they did the entire piece?
Right.
Well, what Korngold did is that he went to Mendelssohn's other works, like the Songs Without Words and the Scottish Symphony, and he brought that music down and filled in Acts 1 and Acts 2. And so I went, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a fascinating area, but it's also takes an enormous amount of time. And I would dial, I'd say to my agents, okay, I'm just out of commission here for the next 2.5 months.
Right.
Which, as we all know, it then takes them another 2 months to sort
get
of
you back into
get
it.
you back in. So I put a great deal of sweat equity into these projects.
An artistic musical family you grew up in, I imagine.
Well, certainly my father.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
Your mother?
No, not my mother.
And how did you find yourself in the arts? When did that begin for you?
Find myself in the arts. I'm not even sure what you mean.
Acting?
When were you inspired to follow this sort of...
I hardly thought of it as being in the arts.
That's where you're like,
When did I start going to work?
And I still don't.
Connor, what are you talking about?
Art.
the job.
What's the art?
I'm working right now.
Unbeknownst to me, and frankly to most everybody else, my parents and teachers and what have you, is that I had a real reading problem, and I didn't know it, and what have you. So I flunked out of one school, and then I flunked out, and then I went to another school, and at that school I flunked a grade, which is they don't do anymore, but literally flunked a grade. And to make matters more difficult, I was taught my entire form. There were 3 forms in that grade. My entire form was taught a new way to read, which was a disaster. So there was no phonetics or anything like that. So along with being whatever my reading problems were, it was
Dyslexia.
compounded. But But nobody's ever said it was dyslexia. But so I went to this new school, and it was a tiny little school, and your next stop was Valley Forge Military School.
Oh, great. Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah, because you are a lazy boy.
Right.
That's right.
It took you 3 tries to get here, so we're going to get you ready for military
That's
school.
right. And it was at that school that the head mistress said, I think he has specific dyslexia. Listen, it was better than being called stupid or any of the other things that were bandied around. So I was just like, fine, whatever.
It's almost like, thank God, I bet.
Yeah, it was. It was kind of a relief. It was it was something other than those other things.
How old were you at this point?
14 13. And we had a wonderful teacher. I'm still in touch with some of the kids from the school. We had our graduating class was 19, so it's a very small school. And we had this wonderful teacher called Mr. Biddle. And Mr. Biddle was the assistant principal, and he did just about everything. Not the least of which is that he would come in and he would announce to the assembly, and that is all of the kids could fit in a room. You know,
Sure.
It's just a small assembly room.
Right.
All of the kids of the school could fit in. He'd go, "We're going to be doing Mozart's Marriage of Figaro in 2 months." And we go like, "What's that?"
Exactly.
Gotcha.
What that is?
Yeah.
So you
Charlie
have
Miller?
these 12 and 13-year-olds who are or whatever. That's Mozart, but not Marriage of Figaro. And then the school play. I remember my dear friend, my first girlfriend, Betsy Spackman, goes, "I want to play Mary in the Christmas play."
Oh my God.
And all this thing. He'd say, "We're going to be doing Handel's Messiah." And then in this particular year, in the springtime, he said, "We're going to do Henry V." And he threw the book at me. He threw the script at me to get my attention because I was being, delinquent in the back. He said, "And you're going to play Hal."
Oh, shoot.
And so I read it with extreme difficulty.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it would have been really great at that point because that was the beginning of learning of a way that I learned how to memorize, which I then had to relearn years and years and years later. But in any case, I performed it out under the trees at the, in whatever, May or 1st of June. And there was a man who had come to see his granddaughter, and he was the editor of the Pelican Shakespeares, and his name was Matthew Black. And
The publishing company.
Yeah, the public, the Shakespeare editions that we all.
The $1.95 ones.
Yeah. And he took my father aside and he said, "If your son has an interest, you should encourage him because he has a flair for this." So I grabbed onto that like a life preserver because it was the only time anyone had said anything nice to me about anything in
The
school.
flunky's good at something.
Anything in school. So I did that. However, so let's say I'm 14. I'm 15 now, and Andre Gregory is in Philadelphia, and he has whatever the name of the theater was, I can't remember, and he's auditioning for the Bourgeois Gentleman, and I thought, I'm going to go and audition. So I went down there with the little prepared thing that I was supposed to do, and then he said, "Oh, that's fine. Let me read this."
Oh, no. Yeah.
I almost fainted. Yeah. I almost fainted. The flop sweat to this day.
Oh, God.
I remember within moments the page sweat dripping from my nose onto the page and obscuring the words because I was in a panic.
Yeah.
And the next day or a day later, I forget what it was, there's a call. My parents said, you have the job.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
And I didn't take it.
What?
I was so humiliated.
Oh, heavens.
And so that started a way that has plagued me, frankly, ever since. I would do plays, and the first thing I would look at is how many lines I have to learn. And the least lines was the best.
Cute. Wow.
Yeah. So even to this day, I mean, I'm supposed to do a little something. I'll say to the person, I actually don't need to say that line.
This all comes back from.
I don't need to say that.
Yeah.
I don't need to say it. I can actually think that line, and you'll catch it. I'm thinking, oh my God, thank God I don't have to learn that fucking line.
So you had to develop tools Because look, you're somebody asking you to do something at an audition.
Yeah.
By the way,
In and of it
can you also
itself
read this?
Yeah.
Is not an unusual event.
No.
And
No, it's very difficult. And, I got better. Betsy, this girlfriend, who wanted to play Mary, Mary for the school play. The deal was, it's not really a deal, but we would go out, as 15 and 16-year-olds would go out. The deal was, I said, listen, I'd like to come a little early because I want to read it out loud. Because I began going, I need to know how to read.
right.
And I need to get good at it. And I don't know how to do that other than to practice. And this is psychological. The school before that I flunked out of, and before going to this other school, I had so many detentions that they simply said, look, why don't you just work with the janitor? So I was like,
Really?
I went, great. And this was a big school.
Right.
So he, and his name was Rudy. And Rudy was
Like
really...
instead of going to class, you would go and sweep the halls or something?
but right after school,
Right after
I would
school.
go, instead of sitting, our
of detention,
detentions,
yeah.
the detentions were kind of, you'd either have to write, which was another, like, oh my God, really? Write an essay on why something like that. Or you'd have to stare at the clock.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Which is, yeah. So I would spend 2 hours with Rudy, and Rudy taught me how to work. Rudy taught me how to, mop a floor and to, obviously to dust the floor, to pick up all the stuff. And he just taught me how to work. Yeah. He also taught me on Saturdays, we would go down to 54th Street and he taught me in the beginning how to play poker until a particular event took place. But the part that was the part that was of a psychological nature is that it was my job to clean the library. Well, I cleaned out the library.
It's reading.
Reading the books?
I would take library books home. I would essentially steal
I was going to say, would you bring them back?
books. And what was hilarious is that I would walk down to the train station, and here's this 12-year-old with this pile of books, and people would be helping me. People were
Carry the
helping me on the train to get a seat and stuff
Right.
like that, not realizing I couldn't read any of these things. Because I was good enough to know this. I would take books that had some significance. I think it's only because of the lettering, but like Locke's second treatise on government.
Sure, yeah,
it's something
right.
that's, every boy needs that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
The collected
I had
works
two.
of James Joyce.
Right. Yeah. The easy stuff.
The easy stuff. And I would take them home and I would lay them out and I created a library. My parents couldn't care less.
Right.
They weren't paying attention. And one day, and I would look at them for a few minutes and go, because they would just be blocks of letters. And then I put them in their proper place on the thing. And one day I brought home the collected works of, what was it? An anthology of poems. And I opened it up and I went, oh. Because the poems would be in little sections.
Yeah, structured.
They were little sections like this, and there would be, pictures and stuff like that. And I could begin to focus on them. My eyes knew where to go.
Right. Right.
And then I began to read them slowly, and then came back to them and read them over and over and over again. And that and reading to Betsy were the two ways in which I taught myself to read.
And
That is
did
so
you
interesting.
was one of the skills that you learned was setting things to memory?
No, and I've never been good at that.
Oh.
I've never been. I have to work a lot.
That's interesting because your performances are so commanding. Like it's
And I always get the role with the person who's talking way too much, and and it's this, bam, 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 bam. So I would have to work. I mean, when Marnie, my wife, and I did Man and Superman with the Don Juan section, that's 3 hours and 45 minutes of nonstop words. Her cueing me, I mean, within, I don't know, like 10 days, she had the play. so
Right.
like,
Frustrating.
Yeah.
But
So you started. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, so you carry on doing this because literally it's the first time somebody has said
You're good at something.
good at something.
Yeah.
And did you just take the ball and run with it?
I did take the ball and run with it, but I don't know if I ever really loved it in the same way that people, quite frankly, like yourselves, who I consider have much more skill and ease, enjoy it.
What did you love about it?
Yeah. Again, that's
It was
surprising 'cause
all
you're-
the bête noire stuff. You know?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm scared to death. I'm going to do it.
Well, we've had a conversation before where that is a skill in itself, where you're willing to. I forget the story. We were in New York, and you were like, "I'm going to go audition for this thing," and you just walked in, and like, and they read you. I forget what this story was. Maybe we'll get to it. But then you go to Kent State
Yeah.
to study theater
Well, I went to Kent State because my grades were
because you got in.
because I got it.
I got it.
That's how I went to college.
Yeah.
The
it
Harvard
turned
of
out that
Eastern Ohio.
I'm glad I went there. There were a lot of good things about it and what have you, but my grades were,
Right at Midland.
oh, jeez.
You got through it though.
Yeah, I got through it.
He was not a very good student
That's
either.
terrible.
Connor.
Barely got into college.
I-
If I hadn't
yeah.
played football, I would have probably not got in anywhere.
Wow. I mean, really, it was your charisma, I imagine.
I didn't have it yet.
No?
No. It was the football.
It was the football?
Yeah. No. Without that, I would not have.
Where?
I went to Pacific Lutheran University in Washington State. And I mean, I graduated from high school with it.
Where an imaginary girl inspired him to audition for a play. He did, thinking she was also going to be in the play. Never saw her again. Got into the play or got inspired by the audition. That's right. You did not get it.
Yeah. No, and
then
that
you
ended my football career. I had never done theater
You
before I
dumped
went to
football
college.
and did playing.
Yeah. And did playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you did do theater at Kent State and
Yeah, a lot of it.
a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, we do have to talk about it. You were there
Yes.
at the shooting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And can you talk about that at all?
Sure.
Like you were there or you were just
Yeah, I
in
was there.
town?
There.
Oh, Jesus.
I was very. Kent had. I think it was 6 theaters.
Wow.
Yeah.
On campus, wow.
And then they had a program mostly for graduates, but I got into it, which they toured. So a whole semester, we took 1 or 2 main shows, and then I think 2 one acts, and toured. We left on whatever Sunday and came back Saturday or
Right.
the next week, and kind of I don't know even why we would have come back, but we did.
Right.
And it was and so we came back early because there had been some problems at school, and I think it was Saturday night. Now it's so long that I'm going to get but I had to talk kind of seriously about this at one point. I'll explain further on. So I knew exactly what the dates and the times and the stuff like the things are somewhat foggy right now. But in any case, we came back, and so I watched the ROTC building be burnt down. And then we were occupied, I think it was the following day, by the National Guard.
So this is 1969?
1970.
1970.
And then, let's see, National Guard. Then
so just to frame it for our listeners and our viewers who might not know what we're talking about, the Kent State shooting was
May 4th.
It happened because there was student riots on campus.
Well,
over
I hardly
Vietnam
call them
or something?
riots. I mean, no, they were not riots. They were demonstrations. Nixon had gone into Cambodia.
Yes.
I think that was the big deal at the time. So the following day, and I'm going to say it's a Monday, the ROTC building is burnt down. It's on a field. There is a hill that goes up, and then on the top of the hill is the architecture building. So many of us had congregated in a long line here. What we were doing, go
College
home,
kids.
end the war, that type of thing. Then they started to move. So we all ran up the hill and to the other side of the architecture building. And there's a small little knoll that's there. So I'm going to move everything over here. So they're up here. And there is a fence that's there. And I'm right here, right at a little opening in the fence that I could go just to the other side of the fence. And all of a sudden, the kids, I'll call them kids, on the on the top of the knoll, ran down. I'm not quite sure why they ran down, but because there's a fence here, the crowd was not able to move other than to kind of go to part, but then to go around them. Just at that moment when that was happening, I was moving just in this direction here, just on the other side. There was a little opening, and I was on the other side of the fence. And I recognized, the tenor of this, the feeling has just changed.
Right.
The feeling of, has changed from a little bit of that kind of, I don't know, it's not festive, but it's it's a little.
Well, it's the joy of protesting something.
I'm outraged, and
Right,
all this type of stuff too. Ooh. They got to the fence. They realized that they were surrounded. They turned around, dropped some of their stuff, turned around and ran back to the top, and then they turned and shot.
Oh,
and
like fish in a barrel.
I was one of those, it was just pump, 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 pump. And I was going, it's blanks. And I turned over there and I saw somebody go down in that way that you kind of go down when you're hit.
Yeah.
At least, I've never been in a war, but it's like, boom, they just drop.
Right.
And I went, whoa. And so it was at that moment that everything changed, certainly for me personally, within that event. But I think historically in our country, that was a major change that took place. I then went to Washington, D.C. a couple of days later for the following weekend for the big protest about all of that. I'm walking along and I am thinking, God, I'm just sort of, there's, whatever, there are 500,000 here. It's like being a drop. Right. So, and I was with another guy, and we saw a phone booth, and this is just not possible anymore. Opened up the phone booth and looked up Senator Young. That's his number, and that's his house.
Oh my God! Right.
And he was our senator,
right,
from Ohio. So went over to his house, knocked on the door.
You went and knocked on his door
and said, from Kent State, I'd like to talk to you so that, before you hear a lot of other stuff, which I'm sure everybody is going to, but was actually there, can explain to you, at least from my point of view, of what took place. Brought us in.
Wow.
And he said, I'll never forget the servant that was there saying, "What can I offer you to drink?" I thought, I'll have a bourbon on the rocks. And it was the first time I had ever seen this. It came in one of those leaded crystal goblets. I was just like, oh, wow. So explain the story. And he said, I want you to meet Ted Kennedy. But you can't go dressed like that.
Put some clothes on, you hippie.
Give him, I think one of my white shirts will work.
The senator.
So, yeah.
Senator gave you his shirt.
And went to the Senate, met Kennedy, then went out onto the floor of the Senate and said a few words. And what we wanted, we all wanted, that there be a blue ribbon committee. Mm-hmm. Once you have appointed a blue ribbon committee, it's outside of the political realm, or more outside of the political realm. And usually people who head those things, that's the end of their political careers.
Right.
Yeah. But in any case, that's what we wanted. And then finished that, and then I remember saying, well, that was very nice. Thank you for doing that for us. But we really need to take our message to President Nixon.
The day's been going pretty well so far, so why not?
And he said, well, I can get you into the White House, but I'm not sure I can get you to President Nixon. So we went into the White House, and we were ushered into a room, and who comes into the room but this kid? I mean, he was a kid. He might have been 4 or 5 years older than I was, but he was a kid. He was the type of kid that you really didn't like in high school.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
He got his perfect job.
You know, he's all dressed up with his wingtip shoes and his
Who doesn't like whom now?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I remember thinking, well, it's time to rattle this guy. I said, listen, I haven't come here to talk to you. If you think I've come here to talk to you, you're crazy. I need to talk to your superior. So he was rattled and he left.
Talk to your manager.
And then
Get me Nixon.
we began to walk around the West Wing while he was gone.
Jesus.
And we talked to the secretaries. Hi, how are you? I said, listen, it's like it was doing this.
It's like spring break.
I'm John.
Yeah, and doing the rap and stuff like that, and to this day, I've told this story many times, but to this day, I don't know if it was Ehrlichman or Haldeman's office.
Wow.
Where they said, Mr. Ehrlichman, one of them, we'll see you. And just then, the kid had found us.
Sweating.
Yeah. And the secretary said, oh, no, we're fine. Thank you very much. I was like, yeah. And we went in and told the story. And it was, I think, a very compelling story about really what took place and stuff like that. And said at the end of it, well, I'd like to now tell the story to President Nixon. And he said, young man, you've done very well. But this is as far as it goes.
Right. I'll take it from here.
And I just knew that was it.
Yeah.
That was it.
You reached the end.
So that was...
You say the senator offered me a bourbon.
Right. Yeah. So it was a really... it was a really moving time, a very impassioned time. It was a time where the music meant so much. Oh my gosh, the music meant so much. So-and-so's record has just come out. We've got to listen to it.
Right.
Did you read what, so-and-so in San Francisco has said? And what about Mario Savio? Well, did you hear that? I mean, everything was very raw and I guess impassioned. I tried to explain to my kids, I go, times are just very different now. It had not been commercialized. It was, so it felt very important and all that type of stuff. But I didn't continue because in the end I wanted to be an actor.
Yeah, but I will say this, you were listened to. You were listened to by many, many people that day, and they brought you in,
and there was a president. It wasn't because of what we said, but there was a presidential Blue Ribbon Committee, and I guess what I got out of it is that I was sure that the National Guard's report would be a whitewash, and in fact it was. And I was sure that the FBI report would be a whitewash, and I was completely wrong. I read that report, cover to cover, and I was so impressed. And with the FBI report, I just went, "Oh my God! Wow, boy, did I have that wrong?"
Yeah,
because they had integrity, because they got the story right.
They were just, it was, just the facts, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I was very, very impressed by that.
How much time do you have left at Kent State when this happens?
Just a year.
Just a year.
Yeah.
And did you finish that out?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah.
And then you go to.
Well, I had gone that summer to Central School in London. One of those summer things, and I had, quote, an offer to come back the following year. And during the summertime, I got a letter. There were 4 Americans, and at least 3 of us got letters saying, we have found places for Brits as opposed to Americans, and that's what we've given. So I didn't get that. And I was very upset about it. I just thought, no, like that. And my uncle asked me to go out to San Francisco. And I went to San Francisco because that's where he lived, and with my cousins there. And I went to ACT and I auditioned there. And I got into their program there.
Their training program?
Their training program. And I was there for a year. And the story that you had before is I think I've told you, which is I was going to audition. It's now the end of the training program. I'm not, and I need to become a professional actor.
Yeah. So this is the 70s.
Yeah, and so I now am going to audition at the Old Globe as a 21-year-old for the part of Lear.
Pardon? We're going to put some facial hair on you, and we're going to color your hair silver.
Come on,
I can lower register.
So I got my audition all worked up, and there's a room that you could sign up for, that you could get it for an hour. And when I went to that room, I'm walking by a whole bunch of other kids who are auditioning over here. So I go into this room and I work up my audition. And now I'm ready to go. Tomorrow I'm going to be playing Lear. Tomorrow I'm going to get that part. And as I walk out an hour later, all of these kids are gone, and there's still this man over there. So I knocked on the door and I said, "I understand you're doing auditions." And he said, "Yes, I am." I said, I don't have a place, but might I be able to do an audition for you? He said, "Yes." So I did my audition, which I had just revved up.
Ready to go.
Ready to go. And he said, "Well, I'd like you to sing Happy Birthday to your dead dog.
Wow.
And now I'd like you to sing Happy Birthday, but nobody has come to your birthday party." I said, "Okay. What did you think of my audition?" And he said, "How would you like to come to Juilliard?" And I said, "Juilliard's a music school." He says, "No, actually, it's an acting school. It's been an acting school for the last 4 years, but how would you like to come?" I said, "No, I really don't want to go to school." And
Juilliard.
School.
That word.
And I said, what did you think of my audition? He said, well, maybe we could help you with going to school. I said, no, you just don't understand. I don't want to go to school. He said, maybe a stipend for it was the best negotiation that anybody could ever do.
Start with
because you're ready to walk away.
Yeah, start with no.
And I'm just there like, what did you think of my audition?
Right. I want to play Lear tomorrow.
Do you think the hump works with Lear?
Stop giving me money.
So I left. He asked me. I said, I don't know where I'm going to be, but here are my parents' number. And he left me, and I auditioned the next day. And of course, I didn't get Lear. I didn't even get the part of
Edmund or
any of those parts. So I didn't get anything. And I'm working at a Xerox store. Okay, for the summer.
Yeah.
And my father calls me and he says, did you audition for Juilliard? I said,
not intentionally.
No. And he said, well, you did, didn't you? I said, oh, yes, I know something. He said, do you know who you auditioned for? I said, no. You auditioned with John Houseman.
And he kept trying to get you to come to the school.
And he wants you to come to school. And I said, well, I'm not interested in going. I really, really don't want to go to school. And I said, I'm continuing to audition every once in a while because now I'm in a Xerox store. And, I'll go if nothing else comes up. And that's how I got into
Jesus.
That's how I got into Juilliard.
They had to drag you.
Was that class number 5? 5.
Yeah.
Did you live at the YMCA?
I did.
Did you? Yeah.
I did first couple of days at the YMCA.
Right,
Oh,
yeah.
You did too?
I did not. No, but I had friends who went there, and it was the thing. It was like, you either lived at the YMCA or stayed there for a time.
Oh no. That was well, for some of us, you quickly went.
You didn't want to be there.
Just got to get out of the YMCA.
Yeah.
Gotta go.
I've walked into a world that
You didn't.
even knowing it, even being at ACT, I was like, this is a whole other level.
Did you enjoy Juilliard?
Yes, and I'm glad that I did it. But frankly, I learn better by doing than I do. So yes and no.
Right. Did you stick around New York for a while afterward?
I out of school. I mean, before school ended, I think there were 4 or 5 of us who were picked to go to Stratford, in Connecticut, and then
at the Eugene O'Neill Center.
no, it was at the American Shakespeare.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then I came back into town, and I brought with me a Vespa.
Look at you.
Oh, a little scooter.
Yeah, I mean, I
Wants one.
Do you want one?
yeah. Well, I'll tell you all about it. I rebuilt 2 of them, so I bought one for like $100 or something like that, and then I rebuilt it, and then I spray painted it, and then I took a big 3/8" chains and I beat the holy shit out of it, so as to make it look like but inside it
had the guts.
Yeah, boy.
No one would want to steal it.
Nobody would want to
You
steal it.
anti-thefted it.
And then
great.
I did what I called blitz auditioning, where I would just I didn't care what it was. It was a little bit like reading. Look, I just need to know how to audition better, so I must go into every audition that I can get into.
Right.
And I don't really have to be concerned about what it is because I can always say no. I just need to get it. It's like hunting.
Yeah.
I got the fish. I don't eat fish.
Right. But I got it.
But I got it.
Right.
That type of thing.
Right.
And very quickly I was fortunate, and I got a couple of jobs, but the one that I thought was the most interesting was I auditioned at MCA at Universal, and I was offered this job to come out to Los Angeles under contract with Universal, and I wanted
contract?
Yeah.
Wow.
I wanted to get out of the city. I just wanted to get out of New York. I don't like the East Coast.
I'm from Connecticut.
I understand what you're saying.
New York's busy.
Well, yeah.
No, it isn't. It isn't the. I don't like the weather of the East Coast.
Oh, there you go.
It depresses me.
Yeah.
It just depresses me. I just don't like it.
Yeah.
Too hot, too cold, too muggy.
And colorless.
Especially in the city.
Colorless.
Yeah. New York City, especially. The fall in Connecticut is beautiful.
Yes. Well, except for the 2 weeks.
But you weren't there.
I wasn't there.
Right. I left New York for the very same reason. I was doing fine. I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
It's just I'm a West Coast kid, I guess. It was just not the environment that I felt that I was going to grow my best in or be my best self. And I realized quickly that I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to become one of them.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed. I came out to California. I came out to Los Angeles. I didn't know a soul.
Yeah.
And my first job, I got a room, an apartment literally across the street from Universal, which that apartment house doesn't exist anymore. And my first job, I took my lunch. I made some sandwiches and stuff like that to take with me to work.
Yeah, sure.
The set?
That's what you do.
The set.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I remember seeing the spread.
Yeah.
And going, there's something really kind of disgusting about this. How can actors work with all this food around them? And
very slowly.
Right.
Yeah.
After lunch, not very well.
Yeah. And so I had very, very, I didn't, what's his name? I'm going to forget. Superman.
Christopher
Chris Reeves was doing a show, and I saw him on the lot, and we were commiserating, and we were both going, oh my God, what have we gotten ourselves into?
Yeah.
What does this all mean? And we both walked away going, the biggest thing that we could learn immediately is learn your lines at a level that you have never had to learn them before.
Wow. Yeah.
As a theater actor. Obviously, ultimately, on opening night, you need to know them well.
Right.
But we're talking about, how do you do? How do you do? Nice to meet you. Okay, let's shoot.
Yeah.
You're like, whoa.
Yeah. You better get this together on your own.
Yeah, and you better figure out a way to do it and
Yeah.
do all of your homework. The homework is everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Were you a contract player?
I was.
Did they
I was
put
one
you-
of the
one
last
ones. I
contract players.
Yeah.
And do they then just put you in things?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. You had to audition. But in 2 years, I did maybe 40 things.
Wow.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So when you were a contract player, did they give you like a base salary?
Yes.
And then you would audition for projects and you would get paid more?
No. You
No,
just
you just
got
kept your salary.
the studio, as it were, got the difference.
Yeah.
What was your take on theater versus being in front of the camera initially? Did you like it?
I didn't, and after 2 years, I did a bunch of plays here and what have you, but I went up to Seattle, to the rep up in Seattle. I really needed to get back into the theater. I felt that was just,
Sure.
it just was calming. I didn't really understand it. My first job was a $6 million man.
Yes.
And
Awesome.
and I met a kid, an actor on that. We were the same age, so we kind of gravitated to each other. And he had never done a play in his life. And I just thought, I don't even know how that's possible.
Right.
I just don't know how that's possible. But then as the years went on, and I ended up working with Jeff Bridges twice and discovered that actually, if he's done a play, it's only maybe one or two of them.
Right.
And I think that he's a brilliant actor.
Yeah.
So you don't need to have done a play to actually know how to act.
Sure.
But I just didn't know any of that stuff. I just didn't know any of that stuff. I wasn't comfortable with it. I wasn't comfortable with the material. You know, I remember reading the material for the first time and I go, well, I don't know. This just sounds like two people talking on a bus about nothing.
That sounds.
And it was two people talking on a bus.
Yeah.
About nothing.
About nothing. I mean, it's nothing. It's nothing. And, you know, and you've spent most of your time doing Shakespeare and Chekhov and Shaw, and you're kind of going, well, I can, you know, you feel the weight of those lines.
Yeah.
And you're looking at this stuff and you're going, I don't get it.
Well, those are an athletic event almost, and these are literally like taking a nap sometimes. You know?
Yeah, just stay out of the way.
Stay out of the way, exactly.
Yeah, and but I didn't know any of that, and I went up to Seattle, and I was hired to come and do one show, and then they hired me to do another show and another show, and I had a great time.
Was Dan Sullivan running it then?
Dan, and then before him was John Hirsch, and who taught me a wonderful thing, which is we were doing St. Joan, and Roberta Maxwell was St. Joan. I mean, it was a wonderful production, and we had our opening night, or excuse me, our first preview. And the next day, rehearsal, 5-hour rehearsal. Yeah. We come in figuring we're going to be doing scenes and stuff like that. And what are we doing? We're all around the table. And I thought, well, this is really strange. And he goes, I want everyone to read the play. Let's read the play again. So we read the play. I mean, we did a table
read of the play.
And then he went, last night's performance, 3 hours and 25 minutes. Today's reading, 3 hours. Hush! 25 minutes of acting. Acting.
Yeah.
There will be no more acting.
On the line.
Yes, get it out.
That's andiamo.
Yeah. It was a huge lesson. It was a huge lesson. But in any case, the other lesson is that I was there and I was having a great time. I met Marnie, my wife, there. She was doing a show, yeah. It was a great environment for actors back. They had, I don't know, a half a dozen theaters, equity theaters. Yeah. If you were part of the group, you always had a play in your back pocket.
Right.
And it was just like this. Just, we're doing such and such. You've got to play that role. Okay, you're done. And here we go. We got something for you. And and it was just went around like that. But it was all at $325, maybe $500 a week.
Oof, right. That's hard.
And I always tended to look at actors who were 20 years ahead of me, just to see what the path,
lay ahead.
What lay ahead. And I had seen this in Stratford, and I now was seeing this again. These guys were suffering. Mm-hmm. They had families. They had. I know a fair amount about a car. In this particular event, this actor was late for a rehearsal. I mean, you got to have a really good reason not to be late. And at lunchtime, I went out. He arrived, and big thing about his car. I went out to help him with his car, and he is kicking the tires. God darn it! I've got this thing, and I can't. And it was what he was saying is that he was 50 years old and he was still living like he was 25.
Yeah.
And I was like maybe 27.
Right.
And
already sick of living like you were 25.
Well, and I realized, why am I having such a good time? And back then, 30 or 40 residuals was making my life Very easy.
Sure.
So it was at that point that I decided I need to come back to Los Angeles and create a commercial life and an artistic life.
Yeah, make the money so
And you could be done.
Yeah,
It could be done.
I mean, I felt the same way. I watched these guys when, in the brief amount of time I was going up and down the regional theater circuit and seeing people. I did Arcadia, and the guy who played, he was in his 50s at the time, you know, and his whole life was about getting a job, getting enough jobs to draw on employment, which is not going to increase your salary at all, but you're still living at the same level, and, you know, living out of Tupperware. And I was like, I can't do that. And
I watched you actors when I was in college, and I thought, how do I be the guy who owns all of that?
Yeah.
That's what I want to do.
Right. So you come back to
There's
LA.
a wonderful actor, and I'd forgotten his name, who lived in his station wagon. Yeah. And there was a wonderful, wonderful actor at Stratford who I went into the city, and he lived in the city. He lived up in you know, up on, I don't know, up on the Upper West Side, and I went to visit him on our day off. And I'm there with his wife, and he had raised a family, and he's a character actor.
Yeah.
Who had been in hundreds of shows.
Right.
And we're talking, and he had been so nice to me about, you know, oh, you should do more with creating this Robert Browning piece you're working on. He was very encouraging and stuff like that. And his wife said to him, show him the picture. And he goes, oh, no, go show him the picture. And he goes, okay. And he brought out a framed picture of him in a costume that had been, you know, a real professional picture.
Yeah.
Of him at in a show. And he showed me the picture. And I just started to cry. And I couldn't stop myself from crying. And it wasn't like, it was, tears were just pouring down my cheeks. It's just, and you know, and I couldn't control it. And I said, oh, Tom, it's just great. It's so like that. And I went out on the street and I went, oh my God, I can't have that happen to me.
Yeah.
That's what the theater had given him. That's all the theater had given him.
Right. Yeah.
And when I used to teach, I used to be really clear to the women. I said, do not marry the theater. Do not marry the theater. This is not a business that will likes you, wants you around, needs you. All of our business is that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So then you come back to LA and eventually jump into
I'm going to go get a job on Star Trek.
a soap opera.
No, that's
soap
right. You
opera,
did, yeah.
yes, right.
You know, which is one, you know, considering
Days of Our
the
Lives,
challenges that you have with learning lines,
Yeah, right.
the experience doing Days of Our Lives. And by the way, I have to say, there was a period of time when I was in high school that I was a real huge fan of Days of Our Lives, and you were awesome. You were like nobody else ever on a soap opera.
That's right. You mentioned this yesterday. You're like, I can't wait to talk about Days of Our Lives.
You were like no one else that ever. You were freewheeling. You know, there seemed to be no rules for what you were doing. And you've talked a little bit about this because there kind of weren't for you. I don't mean to laugh because it was great entertainment, and I was a massive fan of you and your character. Because there seemed to be, whatever the rules are of a soap opera, didn't seem to exist for your character. And
I don't live by no one's rules. I live by my own rules.
Exactly. I do what I want.
Yeah.
And you just popped every time you were on. And what was it like to go from, you know, doing Shaw, Shakespeare, Chekhov to, one would say the lower level of common denomination, which is a soap opera.
Right. Well, I got that job because somebody who had been at Universal moved over and was a producer on Days of Our Lives, and she called me up, and it was an offer. And you know how offers are.
Oh, they're pretty great.
It's like, whatever.
Me?
Of course.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I read the material, and I had never seen, I guess I knew what a soap opera was, but I certainly had not watched one. And it just wasn't what I had, it just wasn't on my radar. And I looked at the soap opera, and I went, oh, well, what they want is a psychopath. I mean, that's what's written.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy ass killer, whatever.
Right.
But what they need is a comedian. This show needs a comedian. So
what insight.
So I thought, how could I do that? And I had practically gotten thrown out of Juilliard because I was really good at spoofing.
Oh no! Oh no!
So,
John, go to SNL. This isn't working.
Yeah. And so I was there the first couple of days, and I'm doing all the Lancie stuff. I'm just doing Lancie.
Right.
And the cheapest of humor, I'm there tracking Marlena in the woods, and I'm gonna grab her, and all of a sudden, without telling anybody, I fall out of frame. And then the next thing they find me, it's in the park. I'm in a park. Mm-hmm. Next thing they find me, next thing the cameras are going like this. I'm there scraping dog poop off of on a bench because I have. It's all that nonsense.
Yeah,
it's that silly stuff.
Pure humor.
Yeah, exactly. My type of humor.
Right.
First, that's right. I'm in prison and I go to kiss her, which I'm not supposed to, but of course there's glass there, and I allow myself to go blam. So it was just all this stuff which became clear when you were doing it. You go, oh, this is so easy. This is easy to do.
Right.
I was very, very fortunate. Al Rabin, the producer, a little Jewish guy out of Chicago, clearly the class clown, who is now the producer of Days of Our Lives,
right,
went, oh, I get this. And 5 days later, I started on Monday, finished on Friday. That was going to be it.
Oh.
That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm out in the parking lot getting ready to go home, never to see these people ever again. And he and this producer who had brought me on board came out, and they said, we're going to have you come back. You're coming back. You're coming back. I said, well, I don't know how you're going to have me come back, because it's I'm a kidnapping, murdering, psychopathic pedophile or whatever you've made me. And he goes, oh, don't worry about it. It's a soap opera.
Exactly.
So I came back, and then they hooked me up with Arlene Sorkin, which was huge, because now it was Arlene, who was fabulous at the one-liners, because she was a comedian. She was fabulous at the one-liners, and I could kind of and she could spin, and I could root the scene. So at least we had the scene going on. And then we had wonderful directors. Not Al Rabin. What is his name? Oh, I really want to remember his name. He started on Ernie Kovac's.
Really?
Yeah, on Ernie Kovac's, and then he went to your show of shows.
Oh, so he was.
And we did a lot of improvising, which a lot of people didn't like.
I'm sure.
And as a matter of fact, there was a time when we came to the studio, and I would look at the script. And now, because I'm improvising so much, I don't really actually need to look at a script very much.
Right.
I'm looking at it going, I go, but these pages are blank. And the director said, well, yeah. The writers have decided that since you're not saying any of the lines, they're not going to write any of the things.
Do it anyway.
We had this sort of love-hate relationship, and we laughed, and we laughed, and we laughed. And it was at a time when soaps were very big.
Very big.
And the people the actors who were on it were all kind of, strutting their stuff, and they were all very character.
Yeah.
They had a lot of weight. Brandon Tartikoff, who ran NBC. Brandon Tartikoff, we're there, working. We're at the studio, and it's around noon or something, or 1:00, and we're beginning to do a run through. And somebody comes very sheepishly, says, John, Arlene, Brandon Tartikoff wants to see you in his office.
Oh, geez. Uh-oh.
Yeah. We walked in, and he goes, okay, guys, you're very funny. You're very funny, but you have to cut me some slack. You have to help me out here. You're not doing daytime. You're not doing prime time. You're not doing actually even midnight. You're doing like a 2-3 in the morning time show. Because when you came on, de Lancie, we had one censor once a week. We now have to have 2 censors every time you guys do a scene. And you still get stuff out there. We just had a great time.
Yeah.
We had a great time. It's the most
that's what
fun.
showed then, yeah.
It's the most fun I've had.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
you
that's
got to let loose and enjoy it.
And I'm told, and people kept on saying, even at the time, and they had copycats of Arlene and I on other.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
If it works.
Yeah, and I've people who've made a whole career of soap operas. I was on for 3 years, but people who've made a whole career of soap operas said, what you're explaining to me is nothing that I recognize.
Yeah.
Nothing that I recognize. Al Rabin, we'd have notes, and they get to Arlene and I, they just go, faster, funnier. Okay, like this. And so, and I was able to bring in the cameraman, the sound, the props, any idea.
Right.
And, let's all make this good.
Right.
So it was
yeah,
it was
which
fun.
is probably a different environment than they're used to. People just locking in, going down their lane.
Yeah, they've asked me over the years. They asked me a couple of times to go back, and I kind of hemmed and hawed because it was so great. But then I always end up saying to myself, you know what? Those days do not exist anymore. We would start with a dry with a well, this is we have more things to talk about.
Well, here's a question. I just thought of this. Do you think that anybody saw you on Days of Our Lives and that had something to do with your role as Q?
Yeah, well,
because there's similarities.
Yeah. Thank you. When I left Days, I left Days because, again, as I said before, I would always look at people who were 20 years ahead of me, and there had been some young Turks who I knew about in New York who now were on Days. And I was a little disappointed that they, Days is a soap opera. There's something wonderful about it, and that is that the scenes are new each time, but it's a little of a no exit. And you get just to be really kind of good at what you do, and
Your own shtick.
Yeah, and it all begins to, I don't know. There's a sedentary element attached to it, which I didn't want to be part of, and so I remember saying to Marnie, my wife, I said, look, we're just going to save every cent that I make. Right. Every cent, as much as we could save. I mean, and we really, really saved. And the minute we get X amount of money, that'll be a grub stake. And that grub stake will then allow me, us, to go back out again.
Right.
So that's what we did. And I don't know, 4 or 5 years later, I was down at the Taper. I was doing a show. And I got a call from my agent, and my agent said, you have an audition for Star Trek, and it's tomorrow. And I said, well, I'm in a show. I mean, I'm in rehearsals. I can't just take off. She said, well, it's at 4:30, and you know. And I didn't go to that audition.
You're the second. Robert Picardo said the same thing. He was at the Taper doing a show, got a call from his agent. I'm not going to audition for Star Trek.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And both of you are from Philly.
Both of us are from Philly.
It's a Philly thing.
It's a Philly thing. And so the following week, they called and they said, you didn't go. And I said, no. And they said, listen, if we can make it at lunchtime, would you be able to go? So, you know, an hour to get from the Taper up to Paramount Park, audition, and back is you got
an impossible ask.
Yeah,
in 1 hour.
You got to be doing it. So I did that. I prepped, obviously. I did that. I was very fortunate. I was playing Raoul Amundsen, who was I had great respect for that character, but a no-nonsense sort of guy. I mean, and big. Mm-hmm. And I went in, auditioned. Guy walks out with me, puts his hand on my shoulder, and he says, you make my words sound better than they are.
Oh.
And I said, well, you must be the writer. And he said, I'm Gene Roddenberry.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, who's that?
I'm sorry, whom?
Who? I have no idea who that is.
Say it again.
Yeah.
Who?
Yeah. And then I am now making a beeline to the door because I got to get back. And there was a guy there. And his name is Leonard Maislish, who was Leonard's lawyer, but who had said to my agents that he was a producer, and maybe he thought of himself as a producer. Mm-hmm. And he said, I just want you to know they're going to hire you. I said, oh, really? And this is a payback. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, about 4 years ago, I was flat on my back in the hospital with a quadruple bypass operation. And every day, and the minute he said every day, I knew where he was going. At 1 o'clock, you made me laugh when I thought I was going to die.
Oh,
and
my God.
I figured if I had a chance, I'd give you a shot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I want to cry.
That's There's the hair on my arms.
Well, okay. You, John, and your role, Q, in Star Trek, you're only in like 9 episodes or something like that.
Yeah, Next Gen.
But it is one of the most impactful characters and roles in all of Star Trek, especially considering how short the screen time is. To have that big of an impact on the fan base, on the community, on the show itself. When you say Q, it's one of the things you can say about Star Trek that everyone just gets. It's like saying Spock or Kirk.
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to this conversation just because of the way you are as a person, your performance as Q, what you brought to Star Trek and to the fan base, whom I feel like I'm here to represent. Mm-hmm. So thank you for all of us Trek nerds out there. Thank you, John, for that.
Did you? I was thinking this last night.
Thank you.
Yeah. When I was watching some of the episodes, you behave. I mean, clearly you're a god, but you behave like a Greek one. The ones that
the fun ones.
The fun ones.
Yeah.
You know, that are up there thinking about how to trick and manipulate and have fun with.
Right.
Was that a thing you thought of, or was it? What was the description? Or did you what did you walk in with?
No, there was no character description. I mean, the way in which it was written, Gene, apparently, discovered this all after the fact, wanted to go directly with episodic. They insisted that they wanted an MOW, so he wrote a secondary story, of which Q appears in this secondary story. Counter Farpoint, if you look at it, you don't even have to look at it closely. It's really apparent. There's a real seam in there as they've kind of mashed two stories together. There was no discussion at all. And I don't know if it's actually as conscious. Most actors, when they learn their lines, they have the lines, and then the rest of it comes. Okay, and choices are made, and that those lines begin to get bent and moved and what have you until you've got
evolves into something.
Yeah, it evolves into something. She said, by the time you learn your lines, you seem to have brought it all forward. All right, so somewhere in that process of learning, which is my homework, I brought the notion forward, an omnipotent being too stupid to know it. An omniscient being too stupid to know it. An omnipotent being with clay feet.
Yeah.
There's something really caricature-ish, and God knows I've fallen into this trap, and all of us have. You're playing the king, and then all of a sudden it becomes like that.
Right.
But after you kind of do that for, a few minutes, what else?
Yeah.
So it's the king. It's or the doctor.
Yeah.
But it's really what the doctor does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you don't need to be. If the audience knows that you're a god, or is told that you're a god or a king or a doctor or a lawyer or what have you, that's actually not the part that you play. No. Because that's the part they already go, oh, he's a god.
Right.
So I don't have to play that.
Right.
So that's opens you up to play a lot of other things. So there was that. And then maybe coming out of the Days of Our Lives stuff, it was the permission to simply go, you know what, I'm going to play it the way I roll out of bed this morning.
Yeah.
Like, I've got all this stuff up in my head. It's in RAM. I'm ready to go in this direction, that direction, that direction. I could do this, I could do that, like that. And now it's just going to be how it strikes me.
Right. Right. You're like Harlequino with a magic wand.
Well, it works for that character too.
Yeah.
The non-linear God thing. You can do that.
And you know what? It sort of works for most characters. Yeah. If you want to keep an audience watching.
Well, I suppose that's what we all do every day. We are who we wake up as that morning. Sometimes we're in a bad mood. Sometimes we're in a great mood. Sometimes we're going to conquer the world. Sometimes we just want to stay in bed.
Everybody who I talk to who knows the show, knows Q, is completely surprised to know how few episodes that you actually did. Why? What? Do you have any idea the reason for that? I have a theory that you were too strong a character.
That's a good theory.
Gene said to me after the first episode where he saw it, actually, he said to me something which was really important, which I've thought of 100, if not 1,000 times. On the third day, the dailies had come in, and I'm watching a setup on a soundstage, and a voice behind me says, "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." And I turned around and I went, "Oh, Gene, what are you talking about?" He goes, "Oh, you will find out. You will find out." And I am finding out. I mean, we're doing this.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I mean, this is a character that's 37 years old.
Right.
So I've thought a lot about that, about how kind of capricious everything is, and especially in our business and whatever.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, you're talked about a great deal You're just not a scene.
Forgive me. And I knew, I kind of lost my thread. He said to me, I'm going to bring you back 6 times, at least 6 times a year. I said,
a year?
Yeah. I said, oh, okay, great. We've all heard that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then the next time I came, he said, I can't do that. It's too flashy a character.
Yeah.
And so it will be, I just can't do it. And having played Romeo, at a much younger, but when I was very young age, I know what that feeling is when Mercutio dies. Mm. The audience goes, oh, geez. The whole reason we're enjoying the play is Mercutio.
Right.
So it made sense to me. And I thought, yeah, it's a very flashy kind of mercurial, character and stuff like that. And it would then become the Q romp instead of
your character drove the episodes. Your character was the episodes.
Well, I would say part of the reason that Q is so prominently forward in Star Trek lore is because you were used so sparingly. It made it stand out. It made it that much more important when you did show up.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's funny. We were just in Germany several weeks ago, and I got to be honest. I've got some time when my table's got nobody coming up to it. Let's be honest about that. I'd look over to my left, and John's got
a line out the door.
Q, no pun intended, literally out the door, and I was like, 9 episodes. 9 episodes. And I'm I'm begging for people to come by my table.
Connor's like,
my Sharpie's drying out.
All right, are you guys ready for some fan questions?
Yay.
Yes.
Are you ready?
We got a lot of fans, by the way, and you've gotten such a pile. I had to stop reading all of them because there were too many of them. So.
We'll get through these ones.
These are only the best ones.
These are the best ones. Okay. Mars from Patreon. Hi, Mars. Your performance in Breaking Bad was phenomenal and heartbreaking. Do you have any memories to share from that set?
The most significant memory I have to share, which is reason why theater and storytelling and films and all those type of things are so important, and that is that one can experience, can empathize, can have an experience about an event that touches you without actually having been in the event itself. I had this happen twice, almost identically. And I don't know, I can't remember where I was, in an airport or something like that. A young man came up to me, and he looked already like he had lived hard. And Breaking Bad is, if nothing else, it's about that. And he looked at me very askance. And he goes, "Hey man, are you Jane's father?" I go, yeah, I am." He goes, "Yeah. Now I know what my parents went through."
Oh, geez, that's heavy.
Yeah, and I just thought that is. I mean, we do the acting stuff for all sorts of different reasons, and it changes all sorts of. But there was a clear reason to have done that role, because here was at least one kid, and it happened to 2. So it means that there are more out there who finally, after their parents said, "No, what are you doing? You can't do that," and girlfriends saying, or boyfriends saying, "Oh, please, you got to stop with the drugs," and stuff like that. Finally, this kid could go, "Oh my God, look at the pain that I create. I can only see it at a distance, but that show and that performance helped to make that connection." So that was the best part of that role.
It's fantastic. Okay, next question. Catherine Matichich from Patreon asks, I read you are an avid sailor. Do you have any interesting stories to tell about your adventures at sea?
Aren't they all?
Yeah. We got another 3 hours?
Yeah. I mean, I have sailed all my life. The biggest adventure in which I've had of late, but actually it's 10 years ago now, actually, is that I sailed from Ventura, California to the Marquesas, the Tuamotus, to the Society Islands, Tahiti, and
Wow.
and those things, and then sailed back. In my own boat.
Like on your own or with people?
Yeah, on the way down, there were 3 friends.
Yeah.
And on the way back, a young man who had never sailed before.
Really?
Wow.
Hitchhiking to America?
Yeah. Well, he was a friend of one of my sons.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
That's
That's
great.
amazing.
Yeah.
How long did that take?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, you could the way back is probably the best way to explain because there you're just sailing. So it took, and I stopped in Hawaii for maybe about 3 or 4 days, I think. So it was 50 days.
Wow.
You just like roll up on shore? Do you go to some dock, some pier in a town, or like, what do you do when you roll up on Hawaii in your boat?
You just go to the
There,
port.
I mean, there I stopped to do a refit. I mean, and just to get fuel and to fix things and blah 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 blah. But normally, I mean, you just sail. It's Ray and I. It was 6 hours on, 6 hours off for for thousands of miles.
Wow.
Yeah.
With the Vespa and the sailing and fixing, did you teach yourself or did?
Sort of. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I started sailing when I was 10. You know, once you begin to do it, I sailed on the East Coast. Huh. My father had a boat, so I sailed in Darien, Connecticut, and down into the Chesapeake Bay. I would sail alone a lot.
Wow.
So you just, I would read a lot about it and stuff. It's always been sort of where my imagination goes.
Anna S. Runyon from Patreon asks, what was your favorite Q episode and why?
Well, truth be told, since we're all telling the truth here, I have never really watched any of the episodes to sit down and watch them. Mm-hmm. After I have learned the material, I certainly know what the story is, and I will see my work in the ADR so as to be hopefully like, did I do anywhere near what I thought I...
Or don't do that again.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the episode, I know that there are a lot of favorites, but the episode that I thought pulled absolutely everything together for me was All Good Things.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
The others were...
You tied it up a bit.
Yeah, the others were, where I'd lose my powers or things like that.
I like the one where you become human. That's a fun one.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Yeah.
Do you tend not to watch yourself?
Yeah, no, I tend not to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
That.
I'll watch dailies. I mean, I'll watch everything. I watch it for homework though. I watch it literally for like, okay, well, don't do that one again.
Oh yeah, don't stand like that.
I'm not too impressed with myself. I don't. I when I watch it, I'm watching. Well, why did they choose that one? That sort of stuff. So it's somewhat like homework.
Well, yeah, and then sometimes I find it irritating. I mean, you kind of go, "Excuse me, I'm talking."
Right.
And you've got the camera on the other person,
right,
who has as blank a face as you can possibly get.
Right.
You can't read anything on them, and I'm the one who's working.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So it just would annoy me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know. Or you'd know that there was a particular take that you thought was, that's the one. And you would even maybe hear from the director, that's the one. And then you'd find out that there was a light issue.
Yeah.
There was a run.
Yes, right. Right.
All right. The last question is from Hannah Page Littaker for the whole Shuttle Pod crew. You're given the power of Q, but can only perform 3 Q-like events before the power expires. What 3 things would you do as a temporary Q?
Well, let's augment that one. What would you do? What would one thing that you would do if you were Q? You're like, I would end this. I would end this conversation. I would go home.
I'm so shocked by the amount of lying that goes on in our culture, in a lot of cultures, I guess, right now. It seems to be acceptable. The level of lying and dishonesty, I would love to be able to do that, where people just wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that so much would be helped by that. After that, it would be, famines and medicine and being happy and all those things. But the one that strikes me every day, you read something, you kind of go, Jesus, you think, right? Yeah. I just can't believe it. Just can't believe it.
And the lies become truth to a certain extent.
Absolutely, and it's all done maliciously.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Great answer.
If I were Q for a day, I would mariachi band. I would take a lead from Q and get a mariachi band to follow me around.
All over the place?
All over the place. That would be my day.
That mariachi band, that was, and I do remember that scene very, very well. And
Very memorable.
Days of Our Lives was really helpful then. It was Wednesday night, the night before Thanksgiving. They could keep us until midnight. And we were running late. And that mariachi, we did not get into that scene until 11:30.
Oh, heavens.
And so, you almost can't do anything.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, and on Next Gen, it has to be exactly as written like that. And I remember saying to the guys, just start rolling. We don't have the time here.
Yeah.
Let's and I'm going to just sort of kind of make this up a little bit. Okay.
And they were like,
Well,
we're not allowed to do that on the show,
Yeah, but yeah, and it works out.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
And that's how I got half the crew fired.
Yeah.
That's right. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
No, we got it, and we were out.
You were out by midnight.
We were out by midnight.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to try to get you out by 3.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for coming on the show. It was fantastic talking to you about all these
thank
things.
you. It was very nice to be here. I'm somewhat. I know that the point of it was, but I'm supposed to tell stories. But if this were a dinner party, I would really have and if this were somebody else who would talk so much, I would have gone, my God, when are they going to stop?
We're not
talking?
going there again.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do a dinner party spin-off of the show.
Yeah, there we go.
John's in the corner not saying a word.
We have a gift for you before you leave.
Oh, thank you.
Ooh, the Sky West.
Wow. Oh, this is a very nice one. I know my rise. This is very nice. Thank you. That's
Make a
very
nice
sweet.
Sazerac
Thank
out
you.
of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Sazeracs.
Yeah, I love them.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, John de Lancie.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Now we're done.